Well, as of Sunday, it's going to get darker an hour earlier. The clocks will fall back this weekend. So joining me now to tell us how we can adjust to the time change and the additional hour of darkness in the evening is Andrew Holmes with Sleep Efficiency. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I instantly get excited. I'm like, ooh, an extra hour of sleep. But that's not necessarily a good thing or the case, right?
Yeah, this one is a little bit easier to adapt to than the springtime. We get that extra hour. But really what's happening is there is a desynchronization that's occurring with our circadian rhythm. So everybody's circadian rhythm, it's also known as a sleep-wake cycle and an internal clock that governs certain systems. And it can actually become desynchronized during this time and actually take a day or two, sometimes even a week to adjust. When we lose the hour in the springtime, we actually see an increase in motor vehicle accidents. We see a spike in health complications and cardiac events, medical errors. And then alternatively or conversely, at this time of the year when we gain the hour, we actually see the opposite start to happen. So, it is nice to get the hour back. And this one is a little bit easier to kind of adapt to than the one in the spring. But we're going to talk about a couple tips on what we can do to mitigate that.
I love that. What about this extra hour of darkness that we're all going to soon, have to deal with?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's kind of the argument between daylight savings and standard time.
Right.
There's really two camps that are fighting for it. The benefit to having the extra daylight hours, obviously from a business development perspective, from a mental health perspective, there's the ability to get out and have that extra daylight. The winter time, seasonal affective disorder starts to come into play, some mental health issues, so it can have an impact. And there are pros and cons, but the medical community at large, specifically the sleep community, would argue that it's probably time to abolish it altogether. And there's a lot of talks, but we have to wait to see what states does, and things are kind of stalled out there.
There's talks about it every time it almost happens. The good news is you have some tips for us today on how we could, optimize this time change and things we can do to make sure we're not falling back into bad habits. Okay, one thing you say, prioritize daylight exposure.
For sure. There's no one quick fix. Time has to take place. But light, and specifically natural light, is the biggest external factor that affects our sleep. When we get outside and expose ourselves to natural light, light enters the eye via the retina, and it activates cells that then transmit signals to our brain that activates certain systems. And that can kind of help resynchronize our sleep-wake cycle. So on any given day, not just this weekend, getting out, exposing yourself to as much daylight as you possibly can.
I love that tip. I love being out in the sun. You can also say exercise.
Exercise while outside.
Right.
So the big challenge here this weekend is going to be your ability to fall asleep Sunday night, right? So if you typically go to bed 11:30, 12, you're now looking at 10, 10:30, 11. So getting out, exercising as much as you possibly can, that will help increase our sleep onset latency, which is our ability to fall asleep. And obviously when you exercise, you get to those deeper, more restorative stages of sleep. So get outside, exercise as much as you possibly can. Again, the challenge will be falling asleep Sunday night.
Okay, up next you say cut the caffeine. I think that's something we all go to. We're so tired the next day, so you just drink extra coffee.
For sure.
Don't do that.
No, so you can. I don't want to have the, be hung here where it's like, that it's not the popular vote. But caffeine actually impacts our ability to fall asleep that night. It actually has what they call a half-life of about 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
So if you have a coffee later in the day, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 50% of that caffeine is going to be still in your system 5 or 6 hours later, and then 25% of that caffeine is going to still be in that system 2 to 3 hours later.
Okay.
So the general rule of thumb and best sleep hygiene practices would be to cut the caffeine after 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the absolute latest. I'd say earlier on this day.
Okay, we just want to stick to a sleep schedule really quickly.
Paramount. Go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. I would say even this weekend, keep it the same. Your body will naturally adjust after a day or two.
And last but not least, limit your screen time.
So we want to have melatonin release in the early hours of the evening. Melatonin is created by the pineal gland, and it starts to secrete and activate melatonin as the dark hours come in.
Okay.
So as much light as you possibly can, natural light throughout the daytime, removing screens and that ambient light in the evening, allowing melatonin to be produced and allowing you to fall asleep, hopefully, in the best way possible.
Some great tips. Thanks for joining us today, and hopefully we can all, ease into the new sleep schedule, the new time change.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.